I've been a Christian therapist for more than 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what we've got right now. The aftermath of these years of global trauma, the trial, the testing, the heartache, the pressure. You see, it's the aftermath.
Yeah.
It really takes people's legs out. And I needed resilience. I needed it for my friends, and so I wrote the book.
You know, as I was reading your book, I just started to realize how worn down I personally was feeling. And, you know, and I think a lot of followers of Jesus maybe kind of lost this yearning. And you talk a lot about, you know, beauty and joy, you know, in a world that is so chaotic and so full of despair.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, what's tricky is I think everybody's doing pretty good now in their day to day,
Okay.
right? We're getting to work, we're getting the kids to school. It's when that extra little bit is asked of us.
Right.
It's the Mayday phone call. It's the panic text. It's the, oh no, you know, my kid needs care. It's the extra that you realize my reserves are gone. And it's those reserves that I'm really concerned about for folks. How do we replenish our reserves so that we can enjoy love again? We can enjoy beauty again. That's where the core work now begins for people. Let's replenish the reserves.
Well, you know, I was thinking of your book when I lost my wallet last week, and it was just before I was going to come out here to Ontario, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to get what are my driver's license, my credit card, and I went into panic mode. And then I was, you know, as I was thinking about your book and how you're talking about resilience, and then when we're empty, that's when it really shows up.
It really does. And so it's the anger or the anxiety, right? It's those things are symptoms of a soul that needs care. Right. And what's good, I'm so grateful you're doing this show, you guys. I really am. I love you. I love your show, because what we're doing now is we're naming it for people, because most folks think it's just them. That they think, oh, it's just me. I'm a little more run down than most, or maybe I'm a little more anxious these days. It's not just you, folks. It's so good to know it's everybody. We've all just been through the same global trauma. So let's be honest now about the need of the care that our souls require to come back to the love of life.
Yeah, and in your book, Resilient, you know, talk about, you know, the path of recovery and getting that resilience back that really is found in Jesus. Okay, in my head, I know that, but practically, how do we do that, John?
Okay, this is really big, because resilience is in, you know, everybody's talking about mindfulness and stress management and mental health, and okay. But the difference of biblical resilience, I have the best news in the world for you, everybody. This isn't get your act together, okay? The difference of biblical resilience is that it is given to us by the presence of God in our inmost being. This is the prayer of Paul from Ephesians 3. So when you're done watching the show, go look up Ephesians 3, starting in verse 14. Okay, and Paul prays this. He says, I pray that your Father, your Creator, would strengthen you, and he calls it with a mighty inner strength by his Spirit in your inmost being. So that's the difference, is that biblical resilience is something that we are going to receive from the presence of God within us. And then how do you do that? How do you tap into that is kind of what the show is about today.
Right, and I love the fact that you love to tell stories, John, and I found that, you know, even some of my writings when I'm speaking, when you tell the stories, that really brings it alive. And so you're telling these stories of grit and, you know, and survival. Why is that important that we hear those stories of resilience? And maybe give me a couple of examples.
Yeah, because we need to know it can be done. Again, you know, the first lie is it's just you. You're just a mess. Like that's the enemy talking to you. And then the second lie is there's no way out. But when you begin to hear stories of people, okay, so St. John of the Cross, for an example, wrote some of the church's most beautiful poetry in all ages. He was imprisoned during that period of time that he was writing most of his beautiful poetry. He was actually locked in a closet, made to sleep on his own excrement. He was not allowed to shower for months. And it was in that brutal suffering that he actually produced some of his most glorious prayers to God. And so the stories tell us it can be done. It can be done. You're not alone. It can be done. How do we tap into, because he was strengthened by the presence of God. He would be the first one to tell you it was Christ in him, the hope of glory, as Colossians says.
Right, and and working with persecuted Christians and reading so many books about our brothers and sisters that have suffered, and even in modern days, I know that encourages and strengthens me. But some would say, well, yeah, but that's them, that's not me. But again, John, that is a bit of the lie. We all have access to the Holy Spirit and this God that wants to give us this resilience.
Yeah, and in fact, we're now at a point in time where you don't have the option to live without it.
That's right.
Because of the 2 years of global trauma that we've been through, and now we're in the aftermath. It's like the aftermath of Fiona, right? Like it's the aftermath that's the hard part, because then the recovery and their infrastructure and the rebuilding needs to begin. Well, it's just like that in the human heart and soul. Okay, so we're now in a time where you cannot live without your union with Christ. So let me just say a quick word about that. That salvation, as Scripture defines it, is a soul that is in union with God. Right. We are meant to be inhabited, permeated like a sponge, right? Saturated with the presence of Jesus. That's where recovery comes from. That's where healing comes from. And that's where resilience comes from. And one of the most simple steps toward it, Greg, you were asking, okay, how do we do this? Is you begin to love God again. I mean, very practically, you're driving in your car, you got your headphones on at the gym, you just begin to love God. I love you, Father. I love you, Jesus. I love you, Lord. I love you. Because as the soul loves God, it opens you up to the presence of God to fill you with his strength.
And that's one of the key things you talk about, John, about getting that resilience, is spending time with the Lord. Get the phone, put it in another part of the house, and just get away with the Lord. And again, in worship, and just spend that time, maybe going for a walk. I know you live down in Colorado, the beautiful mountains, and where I live in Alberta, we were just recently out, in Troll Falls in Kananaskis country. I was with my wife, and you just sense God's peace and presence in that. But we have to work towards that.
Yes. And gang, this is really simple. Okay, let me give you two really simple things. When you wake up in the morning, do not look at your phone. Okay, create a moment of quiet where you say, 15 minutes every morning, I'm not checking the news, I'm not checking my text, my email. This is my soul time. I am in recovery, soul recovery, and I'm using 15 minutes every morning. I'm just going to sit at the window with my coffee and be with the Lord. Turn on some music, right? Say your prayers, read Ephesians 3, read that beautiful prayer of Paul strengthening you, okay? And then same thing in the evening. Before you go to bed, and there's all kinds of neuroscience on this, guys, that the last thing you think about when you go to bed and the first thing you think about in the morning shapes your mental health more than anything else, okay? And so first thing in the morning, it's not your phone, it's not the world, it's not the news. Last thing in the evening, okay, the technology goes off, the screens get shut, okay, and you take that last precious moment of the evening to reconnect. And I literally pray, Jesus, heal my union with you. My soul needs union with you. I need your strength, I need your love. And those little two protected times in your day can be absolute lifesavers.
Yeah, it is so practical. And just as you talk about that, it just brings peace. And I've really tried not to check my phone, except I have my devotions on my phone. But, I'm not looking at emails. I think this is so practical. And we're going to have you back, John, for a number of segments. Both Mark and I are going to be talking about some of the other things in the book, how we can, get healthy on our spiritual path. But last thing I want to talk about is that you encourage readers of your book, and this really struck me, that taking the unconverted places in our mind, so the lust and the, some of the things that we stress about in our lives, and then converting it to good things. Now that sounds great. I totally agree with you, but how do we do that, John?
Okay, this works with your suffering, it works with your temptation, it works with your brokenness. I'm going to give you the simplest thing as a therapist. I want you to go right to that place in you. You go, oh, I'm so angry right now. Go right there. Or, oh, I'm so anxious. Or, oh, I really hate that person. Like, let's just be honest, okay? Go to that place, enter it, feel it in your soul. And in that place, you invite Christ in. Because there are places in us that have not yet been converted by the indwelling presence of Jesus in us. Most of us are converted, but there are these places that have not yet been inhabited by him. Go there, feel it, name it, and say, oh, Jesus, here I am. I'm sorry. I hate my neighbor. I admit it. I'm right there, Lord. Meet me here. Bring me your salvation here.